open on strength conditioning questions. They're going to ping Rob with some questions they've developed and hopefully develop some conversation out of it. So I'll turn it over to Sam with the first question. Go ahead, Sam.
Okay, Rob, this is going to be a hard one. You ready? My first question is, you've had a lot of sports and tactical groups you've programmed and coached and trained for. In your experience, what has been the most unique or challenging group or sport to train for? And do you have any sort of memories or experiences of that?
Yeah, by far, whitewater kayakers. Yeah, really interesting. Really not much out there in terms of programming for whitewater kayaking. Really interesting sport because there's really not a lot of legs involved, and a lot of upper body strength endurance. If you think about kayaking, one hand is pushing and the other hand is pulling at the same time. And from a work capacity perspective, all work capacity is upper body focused. And so we would have our whitewater kayakers come in March, April. They're in Jackson, and ice would be coming off the Snake River. And for the programming, did a lot of single limb upper body pushing and pulling, just a lot of upper body work in general. We would do like renegade rows and Scotty Bobs. There's an interesting midsection element to whitewater kayaking. You don't realize it until you ever try it. Your legs, your knees are hooked into the kayak, and you control the side-to-side pitch stability of the kayak with your midsection. So interesting kind of oblique type midsection training, strength, endurance. And that was by far the most interesting. I would actually take them down to the river, and I'd make them I'd make them do sprints upstream against the stream in the river, and then for time, and then let them float back and do it again. So it's kind of like the river was as a treadmill just to train the sport-specific strength or work capacity, because there was really no way that I could think to train that in the gym unless you had like a Wingate machine. I think Wingate machine is one of those upper body machines that you spin, and I don't even think that would be nearly as transferable. So one of the things we're looking to do always is train as event or sport specifically as possible. And if you have the ability to, take the kayakers to a pool, or you can even have them, tie off one end of the kayak to one end of the pool and have them just paddle against the line. It doesn't matter. All you're interested in is training that sport specificity. I'd have them traverse across the river, and then they'd have to do 2 rolls in the middle of the river, or 1 roll in the middle of it, to train that element, where they capsize upside down and then get up and traverse across and traverse back. I'd have them put their kayak in their back and run with it. What I did find, which was really interesting, is across the board, the kayakers I worked with, which were fairly, I worked with a couple pros and, fairly elite juniors. And the ones who kind of came to us were serious, and they were very hard workers, like very hard. And interestingly too, they all got jacked. You can imagine doing a bunch of single limb upper body stuff. Their shoulders and chest and biceps, they all just got really jacked. So it was really a great experience working with them. Sadly, one of them actually perished, I think, in just a cliff jumping accident or something a few years ago. Whitewater kayakers by far was the most interesting.
Sweet. Do you think the upper body hypertrophy affected their sport at all? Being bigger?
The upper body, no. I mean, they're not carrying extra weight. They're floating on the boat. There's no penalty. And I didn't train upper body hypertrophy specifically. It just kind of came with the upper body focus. Kind of came naturally. Yeah, and the event itself is it's an endurance event. It's it's short sprints really, but over a long day perhaps. So it's not like it's just max effort strength. Go ahead.
Yeah, so a lot of these exercises are pretty unique. When you were coming up with the training programming for the whitewater kayakers, what was like the trial and error process, or did you kind of have an understanding of what these exercises would be before developing?
No, you definitely tested them. Like I think with the whitewater kayakers, I can't. I'd have to look at the plan. But one of the events was a elevated weight vest bridge, kind of like you guys did for the chassis integrity assessment. And I'm not, again, I wasn't sure how long guys could last on that, what the loading would be. So all the time you're interested in trying to develop the exercise, or first identify the fitness demand of the event or sport, and then identify the exercise, how you're going to train it. And then you got to test it, see what the progression is going to be, see what's possible. So one event we had, or one exercise we had at that time, we had GHD machines, and I would take them and have them actually lean back in the GHD machines so their upper body was horizontal, and then give them dumbbells to do presses against. So they had to press against their midsection strength, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if that one survived. It just got a little bit crazy, but sometimes you get a little too sport specific, or it's not what I call weight room functional. In other words, it may be the best exercise, but you just can't progress it well or do it well, or it just looks just your common sense tells you that this may be a great exercise, but it's not going to work in this situation. So.
Oh, and Rob, for kayaking athletes, do you care about their lower body strength at all?
I'd have to take a look at our plan. I think we did do some lower body strength, conditioning just for maintenance, probably just strength, or maybe some work capacity events. But the primary focus of the sport is the upper body. So and again, this isn't a general fitness or a base fitness type plan for kayakers. It's a preseason training plan. So by far, the focus of the training plan should be on the fitness demands of the sport. Are they going to get a little bit imbalanced? Yeah, it doesn't matter. I'm interested in, whitewater kayaking is dangerous. People die whitewater kayaking because they get caught or get tipped and can't get out. And so I'm interested in the sport specific fitness demands of the sport. And so those other concerns are set aside to train for that.
Yeah, so this is kind of changing pace here, but one of my questions dives a little into your 357 and TLU strength programming. So in reading through the manual, I noticed that after performing a strength exercise like a back squat or a power clean, you like to add in like an exercise complex. So if it's a back squat, you add in a couple box jumps. If it's a power clean, you add in a couple burpees. When looking through it, I noticed the rep count for those complex exercises were between like 2 and 3 for the heavier strength sessions. And I noticed you said in studies you found that it increased strength in athletes, but I'm still a little confused on how doing a couple burpees after doing some power cleans increases your strength when you're doing so few reps at such a low weight.
The idea behind that is, I think it's called contrast training. I call it complex training. But there was some research I read that if you train strength and power at the same time, you increase strength and power more than if you train them separately. And so TLU is really the first strength type methodology that I developed on my own. Took together, several different ideas from different coaches. TLU stands for total lower and upper, and in every TLU session, you train every body part, but with different intensity. So the first lift is heavy loading, heavy intensity. So 85% or more generally. The second lift or second exercise is a moderate intensity. So you're thinking 80% probably. And the third lift is light intensity, so 70, 75%. And the way I modulate that is based on the sets per rep, right? So if you think about it, if you're bench, if I have you do 5 or 6 rounds of 2 bench press and say go up as heavy as you can, that load at 2 reps should be much heavier than if I said I want you to do 6 rounds at 5 reps, right? You can't lift 5 reps as much as you can, or much weight for 5 reps as you can for 2 reps. If you can, then you didn't lift enough on your 2 reps, right? Same thing if I said, 6 rounds of 8 reps. So I'm able to modulate the intensity to lower the barbell through the rep scheme per each set. The general rule for the complex training or the complex exercise is that it's the same movement and muscle pattern, same movement and muscles as the lift, and it's body weight, and it's generally half as many reps. Is kind of the rule that I've developed. You're not training work capacity. I don't want you to do 2 heavy back squats and then 10 box jumps. It's not a mini CrossFit WOD, right? The idea is just to get the fast firing muscles, tuned up directly after the lift. And there's different theories about how to do that. Some coaches say you're supposed to wait 30 seconds after the heavy lift, whatever. What I found is just good just to go right into it after the lift. And also, I don't think you guys have done a TLU session. Maybe we could do a TLU session with them one day, Emmett. But it's really fun, actually. TLU sessions are really fun. And doing that after your lift, for example, back squats to box jumps, or push or bench press to clapping push-ups, or power clean and push press to burpees. Just 2 burpees, you kind of see it kind of just explode. I've never actually tested it to see if it trained both on our own mini studies. But the theory is there, and it's kind of fun to do, and I'm not too sure it's hurting anything. If you do too many of the complex exercise, which is the explosive exercise after the lift, then you affect your strength for the lift, right? So if I had you do heavy back squats, let's say you're doing a 6x5 back squats, and then I have you do after the back squats, 10 box jumps. That's going to wear your legs out for the next box jump. But if I just have you do 2 box jumps, it's not going to wear any leg out. So there's some thought that goes into that. I think that answered your question.
Yeah, that answered my question. Thank you.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you now, Sam.
Okay. I've got a follow-up question for that. Have you experimented or ever in your programs like thrown the plyo, the explosive portion of that at the end or at the beginning, or you've always found that it's pretty easy, especially in the TLUs, just to throw it right after, and you're already doing that movement, so do it right again? Did you ever experiment with moving it around your workouts, or you kind of liked hitting it right after?
No, not for TLU. I never thought about trying to do it ahead of time. I'm not too sure there'd be a cost to trying that. Might be interesting. I'm not sure. I never did try it. Honestly, never thought about it. Okay. So in other words, doing like 2 box jumps and then 2 heavy, then like 2 box jumps, then 5 back squats. That might be kind of interesting to try one time. In fact, why don't you try that today, Sam, and see how it goes?
I will.
Good answer. Give me a report back.
Son, go ahead with the next one.
Yeah, I actually have a question regarding the plyometrics. How does the plyometrics affect the athlete on the next day? So if you were to give them strength program 5x5, I have an idea on how it would affect the athlete, but because I haven't been on like a lot of plyometrics training, what are your thoughts on plyometrics training and the effects on the athletes on the next day?
In general, all the theory from the sports performance coaches when it comes to plyometrics is bullshit. If you take a look at the typical plyometric theory, the progression is from simple exercises to more complicated exercises, and then the progress the volume based on reps or touches. And it's just interesting taking a look, for example, at the plyometric program for basketball players. And then you take a look at a basketball game and you see that the basketball players are jumping and landing a shitload more times than the basic progression for plyometrics. In other words, so yeah, I never gained anything, even from the Russian stuff on plyometrics. I never gained anything on theory or design from plyometrics, and I tried it all. Second thing, if you take a look at some of the studies, I remember reading a study where they did an extensive plyometric. I think I can't remember what the assessment was. I think the assessment was just like a broad jump was the assessment. So max broad jump. And then one group of athletes did this really fancy, friggin' plyometric program with all this crap. The other athletes just did short sprints at full intensity. So like 10 meter sprints or something. And the guys who sprinted did just as good as the guys who did, the stuff. My most work with plyometrics was with skiers, and we did a lot of stuff with plyometrics with skiers, jumping over hurdles, different directions, and eventually all of that started getting cut out because I didn't see any return from it. And we do heavy depth jumps and all this stuff, and I just didn't see any return from it. Other coaches have had different success with that. I just haven't. So overall, I think there's probably some work that can be done on the functionality of plyometrics, et cetera. I think that in the area to look for would be what track and field coaches do with it, at the highest level, to see if they get some actual gain from it. But I'm not sure that just short sprints isn't better for doing plyometrics. And our leg blasters definitely trained eccentric load for skiing better than, heavy depth jumps, right? So in terms of the next day, I never did, pay too much attention for that. That would be, how would you judge that, right? By RP, how does the athlete feel? And I know Emmett, we in the past, Charlie actually did a study on the TAP test. Remember the TAP test study, Charlie? That was just a TAP test. I think that was on an iPhone, right? The idea is to check the cognitive load of the athlete. If they're, if they didn't tap as well, some coaches do it with like, a grip test or something to see if the athlete's fatigued that day. So you dial back the training, whatever. Guys going hard are going to train hard. And what if you're a soldier out in the field, right? You're fatigued that day, so you don't go as hard. No, it doesn't work that way. Or you're a law enforcement guy or a mountain guide. It's part of the training is to get over the fatigue and lighten up. So I think there probably are some applications for plyometrics. I'm sure other coaches, really sport specific, might disagree with me, but in my work, there's a reason we don't have, a significant plyometric program. The reason because I think it's mostly bullshit.
Could you go?
Yeah, actually,
Could you go into how you've maybe adapted the plyometric work into TAC-SEPA? Because there's still plyometric work within that, but it's the purpose is really entirely different.
I want to call that, there's a difference between agility and plyometrics. Plyometrics is I would consider, I guess my definition is a definitely field of trying to train something specific, which is ideally fast motor recruitment and train it in a progressive way. Our tactical agility drills definitely have level changes, but that level change isn't based on trying to develop their, fast motor twitch, explosive movement. It's the agility or the level changes is based on what they would face in the field. For example, you're a police officer, someone shoots at you, you drop to the ground, you got to pop up really fast, sprint, and then hop over a car, right? There's a significant level change there. And so that's what designs, or that was the basis behind the design of our tactical agility drills and different categories we have. And the idea behind those drills is to give the tactical athlete, to let them know in the gym what they might face in the field. And ideally, I think one of the worst sins or mistakes that a strength and conditioning coach can make is to have his athletes, to have a training program for his athletes, and the athletes go to the field and they experience something that they have never seen or felt before in the weight room. I think one of the jobs of the coach is to anticipate what they're going to feel and make sure the athletes know what it feels like. So our tactical agility, they'll do it unloaded, and they'll put on a kit, and they'll do it loaded. So officer may never, there's many officers who go through a career, 30-year career, a law enforcement officer, and soldiers, who never get shot at, so they never have to experience that for real. But if they do experience it, at least hopefully they'll kind of know what it feels like, and their bodies will know, understand how to react, so they don't trip or fall over themselves or something and end up getting shot. That's kind of the idea behind them. So certainly there's no plyometric programming that was considered in the tactical agility methodology.
Right, but one of the byproducts that I think is the most beneficial to that work is that motor recruitment and learning how to do that under load, right? Because your movement patterns are entirely different when you're wearing a 40-pound plate carrier, right? And that's, to me, that's always been the most beneficial way to learn for real world application is, you know, just like you said, you don't want your first time to be dropping to the deck being, you know, when somebody pulls a gun on you, if you're a law enforcement officer, or hop in that car, hop in that fence. But when you land or when you're propelling yourself upwards to do that work, I mean, you better know how to do that under kit, right? 'Cause you can do all that stuff unloaded, but it's how you move is completely different. And I've experienced this, you know, in military and fire, right? The way your body moves is just restricted due to the weight, due to how that equipment fits you specifically, all that stuff.
That's part of the goal. You know, I've actually had, for example, on the fire side, I'd have guys trained in their bunker gear, just to understand kind of what that feels like, so it's not the first time they do it. You know, the question is, I think for those types of athletes, to make sure that they're doing some type of training in their gear. Generally, you hope they would do that in their fire grounds training, but you know, busy departments and stuff like that, who knows how much of it actually goes on. And again, it's entirely possible to be, you know, a 30-year law enforcement officer and never ever get, you know, shot at or ever have to pull your gun. But that one time, hopefully, if it does happen, you know kind of what it feels like and how your body's going to move. Even if it's, you know, just you know, doing our drills and realizing that your low back gets, you know, jammed up, or your mobility is something. I mean, it's all that's part of the goal is this is what it feels like, you know, figure shit out now. So if it does happen, you're ready.
Sam, I think you're next, unless anybody has any follow-ups on that one.
Yeah, actually, I have a quick follow-up question. So along like the lines of your thoughts on plyometrics, are there any other like tactical strength and conditioning practices that you see as like misguided or outdated?
Yeah. From the sports performance world, Sam, I think, and Song would know this more, is the whole prehab and rehab thing. You know, dynamic warm-ups. I'm not saying dynamic warm-ups are a waste, but doing, you know, skips and hops and all that crap before a back squat, no, just fucking do back squats, right? You know, I remember, for example, going to, this is when H2F or Thor 3 were first starting there in Fort Bragg, visiting there with a Green Beret buddy of mine. And he took me in there and he showed me the workout that his sports performance coach, you know, from Exos had given him. The freaking warm up was 45 minutes long, like 15 different exercises. It was total bullshit. And that's just because Verstegen, you know, kind of was all the rage at the time, and they got the contract. And I don't know if Verstegen ever did one of his things, but yeah, I think that's definitely, you know, I think in fact, I might make you guys do this in July with your Geek Cycle, the whole mobility, flexibility craze. I'm not too sure any of that is very applicable. We've experimented with that. We do that. I feel bad sometimes because I keep on doing instep stretches and lat plus pec stretches, and I like in my own program. I have like 5 stretches that I do. That's it. And I get emails from guys, you know, hey, you know, what's the mobility in this plan? Because they see it on some, you know, Instagram yoga guy or whatever, and just don't know that it's that applicable. All that matters is outside performance, and I've never seen anything that says that mobility transfers to durability or improved performance in the field, except for like power lifters and especially Olympic weightlifters. And because if you take a look at a squat or a front squat or a back squat or something, and the more vertical the athlete's back can be, the more he can lift, because the first thing that fails in every squat is the midsection. The midsection fails before the legs. If your torso is canted forward because you don't have good mobility, then your legs just can't lift as much. So that's definitely something that does work. And I've never seen you do like a snatch or thing, Song, but given your background, I imagine that you have pretty good damn mobility, or else you would have never competed. So that is definitely something that impacts it. At the same time, if you take a look at the strength standards we have for our athletes, mountain and tactical athletes, they're not very high. By definition, their relative strength, and our athletes are not strength athletes, right? We're not training power lifters and Olympic weightlifters, so it's never been that much of a concern. I'm still open to the idea, and I mean, if you take a look, we've actually read all the research and tested. I mean, there's an article y'all should read. It's called The Tyranny of the FMS. I've written it up before. And it got a lot of controversy when it came out, but the FMS is a movement screen that was developed, and I bought the Kool-Aid, went to the conference, bought all the shit, did it with my athletes, and after a while I said, I'm not too sure this is worth it. And then he took a look at the study he based his theory on. It turns out that the best thing that you can do for an athlete's durability is get him or her event or sport specifically fit for their job. In other words, that's the best thing you do. If you're going to have a bunch of athletes, if you got a bunch of soldiers who are going to be rucking 12 miles, don't do mobility with them. Build them up to ruck, because good mobility is not going to help them get fit for rucking. I did just a heavy ruck a few days ago. Haven't done that in a while, like 90 minutes at 70 pounds. Felt fine. It's amazing how much it works your midsection. And then by the next day, both my hips are on fire. So I'm definitely a lack of fitness in carrying heavy load. And I've been dragging sleds and, hiking uphill and stuff, but it's not the same. Carrying that weight just impacts them different. So that's the best thing you can do. So those are, the prehab, rehab. The final thing I think that, and we've been doing some research on this, is endurance programming. I generally think that most endurance coaches who do it are lazy, because they all do the same thing. And so we're experimenting with that a little bit. And our endurance programming is much different than the endurance program that we have on our website for triathlons and marathons and stuff. It's much different than you'd see from a typical endurance coach. But that's something that we're still exploring for sure.
And then this is sort of a follow-up. But I know in your programming, you mentioned that rest is one of the key components for increasing strength and endurance and all the facets of the athlete. Is there a proper way to rest? Does that rest include specific type of movements, or is it just a general, just sit on the couch, hang out? Or is it go outside for a walk, get moving? How do you prescribe your rest?
No, I don't specify rest. Generally, for our base fitness programming, which is our day-to-day programming for mountain and tactical athletes, most of the time it's 5 days on, 2 days off, built around a work week. And a couple reasons for that, especially on the tactical side, especially on the military side. Those guys are going to be training. You come from that world, you train. And so I kind of found if I didn't give them something to do, they were going to do something on their own. So at least they're doing something. Also, on the tactical side, you have to train for your job. And that's the reason I like to not prescribe base fitness or day-to-day training on the weekends, because you're not at work on the weekends, so don't train on the weekends. Go have fun, go play in the mountains, or do recreation or whatever. But rarely in our base fitness programming do we prescribe training on the weekends, just because we want people to train as part of their job, but not come to resent training because it's something they got to take away from their family or their recreation on the weekends. It's a little bit different, I think. It's a little bit different with fire rescue. I think it's 4 days a week, and a little bit different with I think that's the only one that might be a little bit different for base fitness. Now, for event-specific programming and or sport-specific programming, where we're getting the athlete to peak for something, for example, Ranger School or any military selection, or backcountry hunting or something, then we'll ramp it up and go 6 days a week. And there's a reason for that. The first reason is, of course, to increase. Well, the primary reason is to get them ready for the sport-specific or the fitness-specific events or demands of the event. And the fact is, you go to selection, you go to Ranger School, or you go backcountry hunting or whatever it is, those are long fucking days. you're moving all day long, right? And so we'll do 2-a-days in those train ups. We'll do 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. And the design is to get them fit for that, but also prepare them mentally and physically for the long days that they're going to take at the event. So in terms of rest, we've done, if you take a look at all the research in terms of different recovery stuff, saunas, cold plunge, massage, all that crap, none of it has, research has shown that none of it really works scientifically. But I mean, I've had many athletes come say, "Hey, I got a cold plunge. It really makes a difference for me." I'm like, "Hey, if it works for you, keep doing it." Generally what happens is, I bought one of them little thumper massage machines and use it for like 3 days, and now it sits in the closet, right? Generally, that's what happens. Or they'll go, I'm going to this, special masseuse or chiropractor, and it's really doing stuff for me. And I'll ask them a couple months later, still going? I know, I kind of quit doing that. Those things are kind of fleeting. I think generally rest is just eat clean if you can, get sleep, and actually rest.
So is that sort of the theory when you were talking about earlier for 60-minute programs for the military athletes, just because they're going to be working out anyways? Because one of the previous mini studies we've done that found 5 days a week at just 45 minutes does the same trick as a 60-minute session.
Yeah, exactly. When I was Jackson's age, I would regularly go to the gym and train 90-minute sessions. I'm 57, just turned 57, and man, and Charlie might be the same. He's 20 years younger than me, but I guess I was still training harder. I was training harder than Charlie was at his age, but that's when I first started MTI. But yeah, I mean, when you're that age, young people can just recover faster, and you just want to train more. We generally don't get people that come to MTI are not. They generally graduate to MTI from another type of training. In other words, they've done CrossFit or done something else. They come to us and they realize that we're much more serious, much more direct. But yeah, that's part of it. I mean, we have, I think, in our own research proven that 45-minute sessions work just as well as 60-minute sessions for including strength, endurance and work capacity. Why don't we program 45-minute sessions? We do for our law enforcement athletes who follow our training, because often many rare are the police agencies that give their guys time on duty to train, and so those guys are training their own on a lunch hour, right? And you got to get out of uniform, get dressed, train, and get out, and you can maybe do it in 45 minutes, but not much longer. And we've also proven that training, I think 3 or 4 days a week at 60-minute sessions is just as effective as training 5 days a week. But just from my own experience and working with guys, they're going to train anyway. So if we don't prescribe them something to do on Friday, or on Wednesday, they're going to go do something. And so at least by us doing it, we're able to control exactly what they're doing. So yeah, that's exactly it. Like all you four guys, you're kind of into training right now, right? I've got you doing 2-a-days right now, right? Between your base fitness stuff and then going to the rock gym, right? So it's kind of fun, isn't it? What I'm doing right now, I'm doing something physical for 5-6 hours a day, and it's crushing me. I can't do it anymore. I'm beat up.
Okay, let me sneak my question in here before someone interrupts me again. The thing I wanted to ask you about next is you've talked to us about this a couple of times. You're a big simplicity guy. You've already said it several times in this call. As a beginner coach, or just someone who's getting into coaching, a lot of times all the complex things and all the things on the internet can be very attractive and interesting. I want to try all the new stuff. I want to put it all in my program, if not only to sort of show my athletes that I have complex shit, but that I'm doing the cutting edge stuff. How how has your journey, because I'm sure you weren't always about the most simple things. I'm sure you've talked about how you got drawn in by some, well, you didn't say PRI, you said the mobility stuff. Like you've been drawn into certain things. How has your journey of simplifying everything down been, and what is your advice to someone starting out coaching and how to find what things they want to keep and what things they shouldn't?
Yeah, I would just say that that's part of the natural journey. When you become more confident as a coach, your programming will become more simple. In other words, an unconfident coach's programming will be very sophisticated. I made all of you do the programming assignment before we brought you on as interns, and if you remember, I was like, "Why are you doing this? There's nothing to do with that, right?" But you want to come in like, "I want to cover every base," you know what I mean? And as you become more confident as a coach, it just kind of naturally happens that you realize that you don't need to cover everything. Secondly, there was some hard lessons for me in my own programming design when I first started working with. I remember that the key driver of MTI programming is all that matters is outside performance. And there's a difference between outside performance and stuff you do in the gym. The stuff in the gym is just a tool to drive outside performance. So any type of gym metrics are secondary to outside performance. And early on, the classic example for me was my first dryland ski training cycle. We did a bunch of heavy squats, a bunch of sprint-based work capacity, a lot of core stuff. I thought for sure, and then my athletes came back the first day and said, the first 2 runs their legs were smoked because we didn't train eccentric strength or leg lactate tolerance for skiing. And so I thought I threw everything in there. But when you have athletes come back and you're programming, it was a tough program, didn't work for them. It's an eye opener. You need to change shit around. And then I started taking a look at the specific fitness demands of the sport. And you want to try to work always to getting more and more simple. And the other key to it, I think, is as a young coach, there's a reason that you guys are lab ratting a cycle right now. I think a coach who doesn't do his own programming is behind the schedule because you learn so much from doing your own programming. You learn, exercise mistakes or exercise flow mistakes or what's needed and what isn't, how much time the training session can go. You can have a great training session, but if it's a 2-hour training session, everything in there, you only got an hour to train, there's an issue. Now, does that mean not be open to new ideas? Absolutely not. Right. Jim and Jackson, we had all kinds of fancy equipment up on our rafters up above, stored away that we tried and just didn't work out. GHD machines, reverse hypers, water filled bags, all kinds of shit, wheelbarrows. I mean, I tried it all. I think you need to try it all, and then naturally your programming will evolve towards what works, what's simple, and the goal. We say that sophisticated design is immature, and this is true of not only strength conditioning programming but almost anything. I remember I just asked Emmett last. If you take a look, this is a really good example. If you go online, you search for the SpaceX Elon Musk. I think their rocket engine. I can't remember what engine it is, but the Dragon engine. And he has like a picture of his first one, the picture of his middle one, and the picture of the end one. And the first one is shit coming all over the goddamn place. I mean, there's like pipes and stuff all over the place. The middle one's a lot of stuff's cut away, and the final one looks like a friggin'. I mean, it's almost like one block of metal. It's pretty amazing, and it just shows that process. If you got to test stuff, test it. And always work towards getting simpler, and always drive towards less time, simple exercises, being simple. You'll find that there are sports that you just can't train for. For example, in the skiing world, there were plenty of sports coaches who would have athletes lifting on BOSU balls, and and even I doing pretty fancy plyometrics. We'd have them go front, side, all this stuff. And if you would just take a look at my own ski dryland ski programming over the years, you would see incredible cuts of complexity. Every year I would learn and cut shit and make it more simple. And now, we have 2 exercises in it that dominate that program that just fucking work. And they're very efficient, they're very intense, and they just work. They're not fun. It's the same thing every day, only harder. But I'm not interested in keeping my athletes entertained with fancy exercises or new programming. I'm interested in getting them ready for ski season. And if I do my job, they'll come back and do it again because the shit works.
Oh, and I have one question about the simplicity. So when do you know what to cut in your programming? So like how do you know like to get more simple with your programming? Is that do you get athletes feedback or is it the like reassessment results? Like what are the metrics?
Sometimes it's athletes' feedback. Let me give an example. For example, power cleans. We don't prescribe power cleans a lot. Used to more, but in my own work, power cleans is one of the most difficult exercises to teach in the world for whatever reason. And there's other ways to train what you get from power cleans. And so if you have 10 men in like 10 soldiers in a weight room, and only 6 of them can do, or 5 of them can do power cleans right, that tells you that you should probably cut power cleans from your programming. See what I mean? Right? Or or you're like, well, what am I trying to train at power cleans anyway? Why was I putting power cleans in anyway? Because some coach said me to. What am I trying to train? There's just some of that constant. You have to be open to the idea that your programming sucks, and when it sucks, change it fast. Sorry about that. So that's just something you got to be always considering, is that there's often times when you're kind of watching your programming or you're doing it and you're like, this is just stupid, and you just change it, right? So if you have like my first lactate tolerance training, I call it just lactate tolerance, but just getting your ski legs ready for long downhill run. Gosh, I think I had like 6 or 7 different exercises. They rotate wall balls, the box jumps, and after a while, I don't need any of this stuff. Here's this, touch jump that works just as good for all of it. It's more specific, and let's just do this and develop the progression for it. And so, yeah, I mean, that's just kind of it's just kind of, hopefully if you're paying attention and you're identifying what really matters, it'll come naturally. And as you do it and get, remember that you're not around to entertain your athletes, but you need to be open to what athletes say. For example, our leg blasters, we used to do these things called quadzilla complex, where we kind of load leg blasters. We thought would be a way to do it. But I had some of my professional skiers say, hey man, this doesn't feel good. And they're like, yeah, we probably don't need to do that. And so we stopped doing it. So yeah, you need to be open to your veteran athletes. You need to always be open to criticism and not get defensive by it. You can always learn something from criticism. Always. If nothing else, is how you react to it. But generally, always, criticism is an opportunity to improve. And so always be open to criticism. If you find yourself getting defensive, you got to, step back. The other thing, if you get righteous about any element of your programming, like I'm never going to do that, or, this is the only way I'm going to do it. Every time I've done that, I've come to eat my words. So I'll have some coach get in there and prove against me, or I'll think it through. And yeah, you never want to get righteous by your programming. And if you have the idea that all that matters is outside performance, that means that if you find something that gets you to better outside performance, either makes it better, or it's more efficient, or it's more simple, always push in that direction.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question to that. So when you're in a session and you have athletes you're working with and you're starting to realize your program's not working and you recognize you need to change it. How do you salvage the training session and keep the intensity while switching up what you were doing before? What's your approach to that?
I say, stop. This is stupid. Change this. It'd be pretty obvious what wasn't working. I'd be like, change this, and then keep going. Sometimes you just have to stop stuff. Yeah, but yeah, if you see it going to crap and you're working with athletes, stop it. Don't think it's going to get better, because it's not going to get better. Stop it and fix it, right? So yeah, if you see something that is, looks dangerous, or just isn't working, or it's confusing, or if you got athletes running in each other or something like that, just stop it right then and fix it. And it's pretty clear what the fix needs to be. And sometimes the fix is, we're not going to do this anymore. Let's just move on to the next part of the session. It's fine. You don't, as your young coach, again, you may not have the confidence to do that, because you'll think you look bad in front of your athletes. It doesn't matter if you look bad in front of your athletes. What matters is that you saw it and you acted on it, and that you saw it, right? And everybody sees it. The athletes know too. You just got to stop it and fix it.
Go ahead, Sung.
Or to go back to our topic on the ski fit athletes and the jump touch exercise itself. It's very simple but creative. Like the Zercher sandbag Zercher carry for like 45 to 60 seconds, or sandbag keg lift, which I've never seen before, like throughout my decades of exercise life. How do you come up with those exercises? It's simple, creative, and it works. Like what are the thought process behind that?
Generally, it's not a I think as if you're interested in strength conditioning and you're like consuming all types of different strength conditioning, it's not so much anymore. But back when I first started, I had one of the most extensive strength conditioning libraries in the world. I bought every fucking book. I read everything. Now you can get all that stuff, mostly online or whatever. So yeah, you should be taking a look at what other coaches are doing. Looking at all the different programming. I know that Sam right now is going through some programming that other coaches are doing for rock climbing. We want to learn from them, stuff that we might implement in our own rock climbing programming, and we're going to test some of that stuff. You guys are going to test it next month, right? So that's the one thing. A lot of the stuff doesn't just happen. And exercise it doesn't just happen like overnight. For example, the touch jump touch to box. The touch jump touch exercise I learned from some coaches who I think I can't remember first learned it, but they came to one of my courses and they showed it to me. And if you look at our touch jump touch exercise, there's no box there, right? So then I decided to go ahead and add the box to it. I thought I was creative as hell. And then I actually had a skier at first. When we do it, you touch your outside hand. He's a professional, skier, skied for North Face. He says, it's more sport specific if you touch your inside hand. And he's right, because when you land, you're going to be looking to turn the next way. So this is kind of this natural evolution. And then, we experimented with the progression in terms of how we progress through. I kind of knew that a long skiing day, isn't just, a 3-minute effort. So if our touch jump touch, I think at the top of the progression, the progression starts at 20 minutes. It's a 20-minute, work capacity event, which is a lot. And as it progresses, the work rest ratio changes. So you start out getting a lot more rest, and at the end, I think it's like 30-30 in terms of rest. And it's designed to just build, overall fitness, to be able to do a bunch of squats, loaded squats and landings, like you do when you're skiing. So that's just type of this natural progression. You try something, see how it works, and then you iterate it, right? Yeah. So you have the theory, you test it, and then you iterate it. The power of your programming comes in how is in the testing and how quick you iterate it. It'll be obvious generally what needs to be done. Like the Curtis P exercise, I think I learned that from some old CrossFit workout, and Curtis P was just a welder to love that exercise. The Rob Shauls is just the Curtis unloaded or bodyweight Curtis P, which is a pretty incredible bodyweight exercise. So I think we have an old blog post somewhere where we talk about a lot of the exercise names that we come up with. But yeah, the keg lift, I can't remember where I saw the keg lift, but when we first did it, we actually had kegs. We'd fill up kegs with a bunch of water and put them up, and it's a really functional movement, isn't it? Right. So I don't think anybody trains sandbags like we do. Sandbags are a huge part of our chassis integrity programming. There's nothing like them for training chassis integrity. I found nothing that trains it as well, for sure. But we kind of realized that early on, like the sandbag get up. I learned that from Jim Jones. This is back in the day, which is Mark White. They would do sandbag get ups, and we took another level. We tried to say, let's do a 10-minute event. Let's do it heavy. Let's make it part of our Operate Ugly. And we just found that there was just a great functional midsection and more capacity training. So yeah, and there's been some more evolution. Like the sandbag cross clean. I remember Charlie said he really liked the sandbag cross clean for his jiu-jitsu guys he worked with. And that was just, I needed to do a sandbag exercise rotational that was close to kegless, but a lot of times I didn't, for some reason, I didn't have a ledge that time. And so I said, well, let's just try this. And it works pretty good. So me and Emmett just created, he just did a modification of our sandbag twist and toss exercise. We changed it to sandbag twist and press, right? As a way to do something. But our sandbag twist and toss is just more of that same stuff. A rotational extension, total body, functional chassis integrity exercise. How can we get more of it with one thing? So it just takes. I want to say it's very creative. It just is a lot of times these, the sandbag twist and toss, kind of evolved from, all these different things to try to get it. Just another evolution of the theory, really.
Rob, you've got so many exercises and so many different work capacity modalities. The jump, touch, jump. Emmett had us do it the other day because he's like, guys, this one sucks. I need you to feel what this one feels like. Do you have one personally that you go back to every time? It's like, oh, this one does it. This is probably one of the better work capacities that just you dread it every time because it's so difficult. Do you have any of those that you prefer or just really feel like a great bang for your buck?
I had a coach work for me named John Murray. He was a really excellent strength conditioning coach. I remember asking him one time, "What's your favorite work capacity mode?" And without hesitation, he said, "Sprinting." And I think that by far, just regular shuttle sprint repeats, suicides, 300-meter shuttles, 150-meter shuttles, gassers on the football field, just friggin' 100-meter sprints of the rest, 400 meters by far is the most devastating, simple, no equipment needed work capacity mode that transfers just about to everything. So yeah, and we have a bias in our programming towards work capacity with shuttle sprint repeats, primarily for the tactical and law enforcement athletes, because I think it is really transferable to the work that they'll do, movement under fire. And so I think that's really good. In terms of ones that are favorites, I can't remember what the evolution for this was, but it's like some type of exercise followed by a 75-meter shuttle. Like the classic one is like power cleans, like 3 power cleans followed directly by 75-meter shuttle. So down, back down, and then just walk back to the start. was just is something that I really found seemed to cover a lot of different areas for the athletes that we work with. It wasn't panic breathing where you got that walk back to the start, but if you pushed and the power cleans don't need to be very heavy, but if you push the sprinting, it really gets you going pretty good. 10-minute sandbag get ups, a classic killer for sure. Yeah, but I think those are the ones that kind of stand out. In my old days, we used to do like 100 Curtis P's for time, which was amazing, but it was garbage reps with all those lists. But that was pretty incredible. I did a lot of experimentation how to get 100 Curtis P's done fastest. So yeah, there's definitely different ones out there. And it's kind of fun to experiment with those. But again, it's kind of interesting that all the ones I did, and believe me, I made my first ones. I have this one workout event called Ultimate Driving Machine. And there's like a bazillion different exercises, deadlifts and swings and push-ups, And now the one I like best is just sprints, right? Because you can kind of see the natural evolution of what kind of matters, how to do it simply.
What's the one over the years you'd say you dread the most personally?
I don't know that I ever dreaded anything. I always kind of yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you. Charlie developed one, which was farmers carrying sled pushers. Remember that, Charlie? I tried to beat him on that. It was just like just in the gym, like a 40-minute or like a 80-foot farmer's carry. I think I did a little bit lighter weight than him. And then a sled push down and back for like 20 minutes. I can't remember how it was, but we do reps. He always beat me, but that was fucking terrible. I've just done sled push. You know what? A sled push repeats is pretty damn bad. Just sled pushes. I remember. Yeah, sled pushes are pretty terrible. Like we'd have like 5 athletes on a sled, like down back, and you have to rotate through, and you'd be panic breathing even with that much rest. And sled push repeats where you're doing, intense sprinting is good. I will tell you that I've been doing a lot of long sled drags, and those are not very much fun. Where you're just grinding along for 90 minutes or 100 minutes, and it sleds screeching behind you because it's a metal sled on a dirt road. Yeah, those are pretty terrible. I guess that's more of an endurance event, but I don't know if there's anything that can, and sled pushes are just like loaded sprints. So sled pushes are pretty terrible. We don't have sleds there for you, but we just didn't bring them up. But yeah, they're pretty terrible. In fact, we need to do some research on sled push programming. I think a lot of the sled push programming comes from the powerlifting world. Actually, I think we've actually have done some work where we did a sled. I think it's sled pulls or something on the strength development, and there's a mini study that we got pretty impressive strength gains just from doing sled pulls and sled pushes. I think there's there's a lot that we can do with sleds. That the big issue with them is the sliding surface and stuff, and they have sleds that are on wheels that you can change the resistance of. They're just very expensive, like $700 a sled. Maybe we'll get one of those and do some experimentation with it. Maybe we'll do it in yeah, maybe we'll have you grab the sleds and have you add that into your July lab rats for these guys. Have them do some sled pushes. We would actually put we could actually we could actually put it on the turf floor in there. Or no, we used to have, I guess you don't have a turf floor in there, but we used to use our regular plyo boxes. I just put plates on them. We were able to push our plyo boxes on the turf floor pretty well. I think my last time I had rock climbers in the gym, we had them do sled pushes as part of the work capacity. It was just terrible for them. They hated it.
Any other questions? I lost track of if we worked through the list, guys.
Yeah, I guess this was actually Song came up with this question, but what is like the most difficult like fitness attribute that you found to train, whether it be strength or capacity, endurance, or chassis integrity? What's the most difficult one?
Yeah, by far, I think it's been this idea of aerobic base, and we're still experimenting with this. And I'm just not too sure it's something that's applicable for the athletes that we work with, but we're still testing it. The traditional way to train, first of all, I can only find one or two coaches who had a test or an assessment for aerobic base. And but the way they got to their standards was just to have people go, long and slow for like weeks and weeks and months at a time. And so the theory on it, like that's why I say endurance coaches are lazy. The theory on it just has not been developed. Like the typical endurance coach, if you're trying to run an ultra in July, like you start in January or December with 2 months of aerobic base training. It's not based on anything. It's not based on an assessment or anything like that. Do you need it or whatever? So I think that's one that I'm still messing around with. There is one test that some coaches have, but it's pretty geeky. You need to actually, do a couple assessments ahead of time, and so that's the one that that's been the most difficult for me to get my head around. But there are some details on others, right, that we're working on. Like we don't have a chassis integrity assessment right now. You guys are doing that. What is our assessment for chassis integrity? That's a major hole in my programming, right? I need to have a chassis integrity assessment. Some way we can test it. And I just haven't figured out what would be the good assessment for it. And you guys are testing one right now. I still don't know if it's right. Or lab ratting through it. So yeah, there's definitely things that we can need to work on in terms of more stuff. With Charlie last summer, we kind of got a little bit better on our tactical agility. Work capacity is somewhat of a hole for us right now. We program work capacity that's based on different durations of work capacity events. But we don't know that one area of work capacity transfers to another. So the best way to do that would be to steal something from endurance and program work capacity based on power. For example, how many watts you produce. So that would be probably the best way to design work capacity, because then we can say, okay, we're going to do work capacity based on wattage. We want an event that trains 400 watts or whatever it is, and we got 2 exercises. Anyway, it just gets very complicated. I don't need to go into it now, but that would be an area that we definitely need to improve. I just don't know if there's a great improvement for it. We have our own assessments, but it'd be better to train it to program work capacity versus wattage. But for example, if I'm going to try to figure out how many watts you produce for that event, I talked about power cleans to sprints. It'll be different based on your height for how much wattage you produce for a power clean, because my 5'4", if I'm doing a power clean at 95 pounds, and Sam, how tall are you, Sam?
6'2".
Yeah, so I'm it's 8 inches shorter than Sam. So he's going to move the barbell 8 inches further than me. So if we do it at the same time, he's going to produce more power. So it has to be really visualized. I don't mean to get too geeky on you, but we've explored that before and just haven't got very far on it. So yeah, there's definitely some holes in our programming that we're trying to improve. There's a few things that we've nailed. I think we've nailed how to train strength over many different types of progressions, and to get to our relatively modest relative strength goals that we have for athletes. Our speed over ground for endurance work is very effective. So to get somebody faster at doing a 6-mile ruck or a 3-mile run or something, that programming is very effective. I think for a functional perspective, our chassis integrity programming is very unique and very effective. And in our selection specific programming or event specific programming, whether it be a mountain event, a Denali climb or a preseason sport, like rock climbing or green brace selection, SFAS. That stuff is very effective, and those programmings are very simple. It's not complicated programming. It's very simple. So we definitely have some strengths, but there's things that we are always constantly working on, which is why you guys are there and why we're having you do your own geek cycle.
Rob, I don't know if you saw it, and we sent it out in the newsletter this morning, but there was a interesting study that was released. This is relating to aerobic base training. The assessment was really kind of a max effort. I forget the distance offhand, but essentially they were monitoring training load over the course of a cycle with the intent of increasing aerobic capacity. And they used all this, fitness tech wearables. I think they used 7 different types. And the last one that they used was just a survey form that was NASA's they used with astronauts. And it's really fascinating because it ended up being the most accurate measurement of training load versus all of these various metrics. So it kind of goes back to like simple feedback loops. It was interesting just in terms of monitoring that load over time and developing aerobic base.
Yeah, I think I got a question from somebody, a new coach or something, asked, if you had one piece of advice, what would you do? And my piece of advice for every beginning strength and conditioning coach, including you guys are interning, is to develop assessments. I don't know anybody's developed as many assessments as we have over the years. And developing assessments is an incredible tool to push your own growth as a strength conditioning coach. Because when you develop an assessment, you have to make choices. You have to choose. It forces you to develop what's important, and then you have to choose the exercise to train that. And a good assessment is assesses the fitness demands of the mission or the event. Uses simple exercises and relatively simple equipment, and it doesn't take all damn day. And I've developed more of these, and that's by far an incredible tool. And it's interesting what Charlie just said. In terms of getting it simple, and and the first thing I'll ask any strength coach is, what's your assessment? I'm really curious about the assessment and the thought behind it, and our assessments have evolved. Like we're going to probably be evolving Operator Ugly here pretty quick, which is a famous assessment of ours. I got a guy taking a look at one of the most interesting assessments I've developed is the K9 officer assessments. And actually 2 of the events involve the dog. There's a work capacity event where the K9 officer and the dog are hopping over boxes. And then I think you have to run like a mile and a half with your dog. Right. Which is really kind of an interesting element to put in there. But the dog's fitness is key, and how you manage and work with the dog doing something is also key. I just had a canine officer reach out to me to do that. We just developed an assessment for a part-time SWAT team. How is it different than a regular full-time SWAT team? And we have a team in the Southeast America right now kind of working through this SWAT assessment, part-time SWAT assessment. So that'd be one thing for sure, as you evaluate another coach's programming and go to develop your own programming, is what are your assessments, right? So like if I was going to talk to, and it doesn't matter what field it's in, if I was going to talk to a Division I football strength conditioning coach, I'm sure he has standards in terms of strength standards and assessments for all the different positions on the football field. He probably has a squat and a bench press standard for his defensive lineman, which is different than his defensive backs, which is, and these other things. And assessment driven programming really helps you identify what's important. If it's too loose, you don't know where you're going. I think you should always know where you're going. Just even if you're going, you should always know where you're going. And even if you get there and it's wrong, you can adjust it. If you don't know where you're going, you're just treading water. You're not getting any feedback. You're not making any progress. So knowing what doesn't work is as valuable as knowing what does work, right? It's just as valuable. Making mistakes, you always learn most from your mistakes. So
Cool. Any follow-up questions, fellas?
Emmett, no questions from you?
Getting shaken
I thought you were
heads.
gonna ask me a hard question.
No, I asked you one just about the timing with the studies, but you sort of explained into it before I was able to ask it.
Okay.
Which makes sense. I mean, me growing up, if I was working out every day and if I didn't, I just felt lazy. So I would have been doing the same thing. If you gave me 45 minutes, I would have been doing something after.
Yeah, you just feel, most of the athletes come to us, I have to hold them back.
Yeah.
Like they want me to do extras. Yeah, no, don't do anything extra. Like I'll get a lot of guys like, hey, I'm training for this. Is it okay if I do this extra? It'll help me to get better doing push-ups. If I do your push-up regression twice a day, like, no, they won't. It's pretty intense. You just let yourself rest to get stronger. So yeah, it's one of those
Well, I
things.
guess
And
I do have
sometimes as coaches, go ahead.
I said, I guess I do have a little bit of a follow-up because during the seminar you were talking about how CrossFit, they end up only really training for, 20 minutes a session and end up getting, 60 to 80 minutes total. Have you tried doing shorter sessions, lower than 45 minutes to see how that compares? Because I know we've got the limited equipment and the daily or the busy dad, but those are still, 30 to 45 minutes.
Now that might be kind of interesting to see if we could develop, a 30-minute session that had a lot of work. I'm kind of doing that a little bit with the, our Polar Gen X programming, where the strength work is just 30 minutes long and generally fairly heavy. And Charlie just did something like a minimum dose. I didn't read your study, Charlie. Didn't you just do a minimum effective dose for maintaining strength or something? What was the results of that?
Well, thanks for reading it, Rob. That was a study design. So I'm going to do an 8-week cycle. I'm in week 2 of it right now, training twice a week. And this is just strength focused. I'm just focused on strength maintenance because I get so much work capacity and endurance work from my outside stuff. So training twice a week, no progression. I have an assessment that is, I'm doing a max rep, and this is all, I'm kind of limited based on the equipment that I have in my garage, right? So I'm doing a max assessment of reps on a trap bar deadlift at 325, a max weighted pull-ups at 25 pounds, and a max farmer's carry hold at 225 pounds using the trap bar deadlift. So certainly kind of muscular endurance focused, but I think the carryover will still be there. So I tested that already. I'll retest in a couple of weeks. And then that second 4-week period will be 1 session a week, same training swap. Each training session is a kind of total lower upper split. But I'll be doing single sessions, and I'm curious to see if dropping to a single session is enough to maintain my current strength. And then Sam and I were just talking about this yesterday, but I was reading up on Mark Mentzler. Sam reminded me of his name because I couldn't remember. He was a bodybuilder from the 70s. Mike, excuse me. And he just did a single rep to near failure or a single set to failure or near failure.
So a lot of funky stuff like that.
Yeah.
1 set or like 1 day a week, or just like super low volume and just jacked up the intensity. And then just like as soon as you feel like you're ready to come back, stuff like that. So similar to what Charlie was doing.
Yeah, I'm curious. So I think I might extend it for a third 4-week period and just, I'm doing kind of standard sets and reps right now. I might just bump it down for that third cycle to once a week, single set of trap bar deadlift, single set of weighted pull-ups, single set, etc. And see if that carries over, kind of whittling it down to the absolute minimum effective dose.
The standard rule from the endurance world is that you're able to maintain a fitness level of fitness by training it half as often once you have it. So, for example, if you have aerobic base, you only have to train aerobic base half as often once you get there. You're even going further, and it'll be interesting to see, kind of what you develop with. I think what's really key here is just the experimentation and try it on yourself. I think as strength and conditioning coaches, I wouldn't say we're necessarily athletes. I never ever really, I thought of myself as an athlete now as I've gotten older before, but I've never really considered myself an athlete. I've just always kind of been this guinea pig, right? You try different stuff. And it's really fun to try to do that stuff. And you always have time, what we have found is you don't need 8 weeks to get you don't need 8 or 12 weeks like the academics say to find out if one programming is working. With a well-trained athlete, you can find out in about 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, you'll know. Yeah, good for you, Charlie. We'll see how it works out. All right. What was the trap bar deadlift for reps at 325 just till failure, or did you do it based on time? Like you did it for 90 seconds? See how many reps in 90 seconds? Do you remember?
No, to failure. And my failure point was just a break in kind of spinal integrity.
Got it. Yeah.
Keep it safe because it's fairly high
technical
rep.
failure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
You might be able to tack us onto it too, because we're doing our, bench press, military press, push press, and we don't have any upper body stuff. I think me and you talked about maybe doing just 1 day a week, because we're doing 3 days a week now. We're just training it 1 day a week for the next session to see if we can, just maintain.
Right. Yeah. Because you guys are doing 3 days a week now for the king density of upper body lifts exercise. And then, it'll be interesting to see, following if you can train it 1 day a week and what the programming would be.
We could do different things too, like 5x5. I think me and Song were talking about it a little bit, what we could try.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to see if you can, maintain a fitness attribute. I think that the laws of gravity will eventually impact you. That eventually you'll lose it if you don't train it, but who knows? Maybe not. And that might be also keyed into training age. So if you have a high training age, like me and Charlie have, you're able to maintain your strength longer than you would if you didn't have a high training age. It's hard for me to test now because I have so many joint issues. My joint will limits how much I can lift because my knees hurt, my shoulder hurts or whatever, but I'm just not able to lift as much. But so I assume that with training age that you're able to maintain it longer. So training age is not your actual age, but how long you've been training. So if you've been training strength, like I have for 40 years now, then I might be able to maintain it longer than like Sam was. He's only been doing it for 10 years or whatever.
Yeah, my hypothesis is if Jackson goes to doing push press once a week, he'll still go up. I mean, with how young he is and sort of new to lifting is, I could be full of shit, but I kind of feel like he could still gain.
Yeah, I assume that Mike Minster was juiced up pretty good on steroids back in the day, so that would make a difference too, right? So there's other things to consider there.
He's got that natural 21-year-old, 20-year-old juice, so
he's gonna put on 30 pounds from his two months there in Ogden. 30 pounds of muscle. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll run some off him with your rucking that's coming, so keep some of that weight down. Emmett, he's his brother. He went and visited his brother. His brother was telling me that he's really filled out. I could tell Wyatt was his brother. Wyatt was a little threatened now because Emmett's getting jacked and getting bigger. That's kind of funny because Emmett's. I guess you've been doing a lot of endurance stuff, right, Emmett? You've been doing a lot of lifting, but now you're lifting, so you're just turned 30. So yeah, everybody matures, I guess, greater. Like I get lots of emails from guys who are like, I'm 22. I'm skinny. I'm like, 6 foot, weigh 175 pounds. Should I do hypertrophy? I'm like, you can, but it's just going to come naturally. You just haven't filled out yet. I mean, I don't even think hypertrophy will put much on you until you're whatever your body kind of clicks over and you just start filling out. Then you get to my age and I don't eat any sugar. I can't get down to my weight down, so my metabolism slowed so much. All right, any more questions?
All done here.
Sounds good. Thanks for the chat work, fellas.